to the Movie Club Emporium. We're foregoing the whole setup today. We're doing this Nick style because it is very, very late at night. And everybody's sleeping, but I finally was able to watch the new take on Faces of Death. So it's more of a meta reimagining than an actual like sequel or remake. And obviously, if you know Faces of Death, you understand that. Faces of Death for me and for like people, my age, it was something that like you heard about. Somebody always had an older brother who knew a guy who had a copy of it. I remember at my Nick's local video store, they were really cool with letting us just kind of rent whatever, you know. No real parental guidance was needed, except for there was one shelf, and it was in the row right before horror. So all the horror movies were fair game. But there was the row before that, there was one little shelf on the bottom that was like their adult section. I don't think it was like purely adult. I believe it was just like, a couple of body chemistries and like some Skinamax stuff and Faces of Death. And there was like, no, you cannot, you kids, please, you can go watch Scanners, and you can watch all the Jason movies as 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, but Faces of Death you can't possibly watch. And so one of those movies, like, you saw it at a sleepover, and were, depending on when you saw it, you were immediately like, oh man, this is the realest shit I've ever seen in my life. Oh man, this is crazy. Or you're a little older and you're like, oh wow, this looks really bad. And seems very fake. And because they wouldn't have put like a real movie like this in the theater. And then you find out, oh yeah, it's like 100% fake. It's a fake documentary. Spliced with like driving school footage. And so it's just one of those things, like, it was never a big deal for me. I never saw the sequels. As a kid, the one that sticks out to you the most is the monkey brain one, which is just like, I mean, it's animal torture is one thing, and knowing, growing up and watching horror movies, seeing a lot of like Italian horror, especially like the zombie stuff, cannibal stuff, the animal torture was not out of the question for reals. But it was always just one that stuck. And then the electrocution, of course, is the most famous image of the guy with the cotton balls taped to his eyes. But so this, when they were just like, there's gonna be new Faces of Death, I was like, that seems stupid, because like, yeah, as a middle school kid, that's with my generation, is the middle school me, like, dealt with like the VHS. Somebody knows somebody that owns a copy of it. But by the time you hit high school, like, the internet was there, and so like, Rotten.com was a place where you could just watch the most horrific things, unchecked, because the internet was the Wild West back then. And that's kind of what is interesting about doing this now, is because it's actually a really smart story of a horror film. It's not going to be for everybody. In fact, while it does a lot of things well and does a lot to... One of the things it does well is include the original Faces of Death. there's a lot here that is going to remind you of other things, whether it be movies like Red Rooms or The Den, which is criminally underrated. The Den is a movie that I think Sean and I saw our second year of Texas Nightmare, and has never really gotten any kind of appreciation. It's a found footage movie, and it's really good. Also, really great underappreciated horror movie, Censor, because this movie is about a young woman who works for the not TikTok of this film world, and she is a moderator, and she basically has to watch videos that are flagged, and see if they are, really, if they need to be banned or all those things. And you think now most, in your head, you're like, oh, like Facebook and Meta, that's all done with AI, and like the idea of, man, what a terrible job. Like, you're the guys to sit there and be like, watch all this like crap. Uh, that sucks. But she comes across these videos that's like, uh, she can't tell if they're real or fake murders, but they're being completed by mannequins, and they're essentially recreating like the different deaths from the original Faces of Death. Whether it's the um the like the monkey one was got a bunch of dummies, or um they do the execution one, the guy getting gunned down by police, all these things. And then the movie switches over, and you're following, I think it's Dacre Montgomery. It's Billy from Stranger Things. He's our killer, and he wears these really weird red contacts with this. Basically, dresses like a mannequin, which is very off-putting. Um, and basically, he is just like recreating these deaths. And at the end of the movie, he gives like this really weird Bond villain speech about why he's doing it. Um, but it essentially becomes her trying to prove that these are real. He's doing these things, and then their paths cross. He's able to one up her on several occasions, just because, uh, she, like, the cops in this world are no help. She's also targeted as because her and her sister were doing like a prank video, like dancing on train tracks, and there's an accident, and her sister dies because of it. And so everybody's like, she's trying to be like, hey, there's a serial killer recreating these deaths online, and people are like, aren't you from that video? Which is kind of sad. The lead actress, I've never seen her in anything before. She's fantastic, and oh, Billy is great too. Um, and I love the fact that this movie also does, uh, like the Red Rooms, like, uh, um, the ones I mentioned, Censored, The Den. This movie also doesn't have like a cookie cutter Hollywood ending. It's a very dour film. Um, but it is interesting that they would kind of take this meta approach with something like Faces of Death, because again, outside of like, once, it's not something that I feel like once the internet came about, like nobody needed Faces of Death to trick them into believing things were real, because we get that every day. And so, I don't think this is a movie that is gonna blow you away. I will say it is very unflinching in a lot of the deaths, the scenes and stuff, and it is kind of like a weird take on a slasher film, because you are following him slashing these people. It does take on a lot of that stuff, so it is a weird slasher film. It's an interesting way to kind of pay homage to the how notorious the original one was, while also not just being more than just, we're gonna call our movie Faces of Death because you've heard that title. Definitely, they do pay umbrage to the quote unquote legacy of Faces of Death. But it's not one that I'm just like, oh man, it's gonna blow your mind. Because again, like something like Censor or Red Rooms or The Den, I think, have already kind of tackled this. And this movie doesn't do anything that's just like groundbreaking. But it is interesting to see something like this come out. Obviously not at a decent time where I live, because Bible Belt, baby. But it was interesting, and I'd be curious to know your thoughts, or your experiences with Faces of Death. Like I said, I'm of the age where I'm kind of between two worlds of that era of like, oh man, you gotta see it, it's totally real, dude. And also being like, oh, I can watch the most horrific things are just at my fingertips. Let me pause this LimeWire download so I can watch horrific things on the internet. So yeah, I'd be curious to see what you guys think. Next week, I promise to have the setup better. Hopefully, won't have to do this at such an evil, ungodly hour. Maybe it's appropriate for this film. Next week, though, I am planning on seeing. We'll be talking about Lee Cronin's The Mummy. Number one, because I'm so curious. This is such a The Invisible Man, I think it was universally loved. I, unlike most, really liked The Wolfman. Now we're getting this version of The Mummy. The last Mummy movie that came out in the theaters did not do well. I reviewed that one. That's an old Facebook video reviewing the Tom Cruise Mummy. Also, I like Lee Cronin. I like Evil Dead Rise, but to be like, I'm gonna put my name on, but this is like Lee Cronin's The Mummy. I'm very curious how this plays out. So next week we'll be talking about Lee Cronin's The Mummy. Until then, I'm gonna go to bed, and I'm gonna do a time-honored tradition of turning on something really funny and falling asleep to it, because that's what you're supposed to do after you watch Faces of Death at a sleepover. Just watch something funny. That way you don't have to call your mom. So I don't want to call my mom. She'd be so angry. It's so early. It's so early. All right. Well, next week we'll talk about The Mummy. And until then, number one, use a VPN. If I had a sponsor, this would be where I'd be like, hey, put in code Movie Club and get 25% off your VPN. You should probably get one. There's free advice. Not a sponsor. Unsolicited. Until then, I'll see you guys next week.